One important consideration during developing a Vue.js application is to protect routes, whether it's authentication, role-based access, preventing users from leaving a form with unsaved changes, or tracking navigation events. Vue Router's navigation guards let us control what happens before, during, and after navigation. Navigation guards are similar to lifecycle hook functions. During a component's lifecycle, Vue allows us to inject custom logic at specific stages using hooks like onMounted. For example, in previous videos, we used onMounted to fetch data when a component loads. Similarly, Vue Router provides navigation guards, which are hook functions that let us inject code during the route navigation process. This means we can control what happens before a user enters, leaves, or moves between pages. In this video, I'll explain how navigation guards work and walk you through implementing them in a real-world blog application. Like before, let's start by looking at the finished demo. We will enhance our Vue.js blog application using Vue Router's navigation guards to introduce the following features. First, restricting access to blog post content. Only authenticated or logged in users will be able to view the content of a specific blog post. Visitors, in other words, users who are not logged in, can still access the home page, the blog post list, and the about page. However, if a visitor attempts to click on a specific blog post, they will be redirected to the login page. This feature requires restricting access to the blog post route. So here, let's log in. John, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, log in. As you can see, after logging in, John can visit the details in blog post 1. And he can access other blog posts as well. The second feature we want to introduce is prompting users to like us on Facebook. So here, I'm clicking About. When a user is about to navigate away from the About page, for example, clicking Home or Blog Posts, the system will prompt the user to like us on Facebook. The third feature is logging successful navigations. Every successful navigation, like this, across the application will be logged. This can be used for analytics, debugging, or monitoring user activity. Let's go to VS Code and implement the three features. First, let me create a new Git branch from the previous branch. Git branch Vue Router navigation guards. Git switch Vue Router navigation guards. Note that we're now on branch Vue Router navigation guards. Let's start the application. npx JSON server db.json. First, let's start the JSON server. Then in a different terminal, npm run dev. As the name suggests, the navigation guards provided by Vue Router are primarily used to guard navigations, either by redirecting it or canceling it. There are a number of ways to hook into the route navigation process, globally, per route, or in component. Let me show you how to define a global guard, which is the most commonly used navigation guard. Let's go to src router index. So as you can see, this is the router instance we defined in previous videos. here. Let's define a global navigation guard. Router dot before each, to, from, console.log from.name to.name. Return true. Okay, so let me explain this before each method. Before each is a very useful global navigation guard. This guard function receives two arguments, to and from. To refers to the target route location being navigated to. From refers to the current route location being navigated away from. This function gets invoked automatically before each navigation, hence the name Global Navigation Guard. So let's test. In the browser, let's press F12. Let's click blog post. So can you tell me what will be printed here in the console? What is the from.name and what is to.name? Let's see. Okay, as you can see, from.name is home. We are navigating away from the home route. And to.name is blog post's greeting. That is the route location we are navigating to. Now let's navigate to about. This time we are navigating from blog post's greeting to about. Optionally, we can add a return value. In this case, it is return true. That means let the navigation happen. What about here I return false? Okay. So let's click blog posts and then click about and click home. As you can see, return false prevents navigation. In other words, it cancels the current navigation. And let's try again. This time, pay attention to the URL here. As you can see, it's not changing. It will always be reset to that of the from route. Here, if we get rid of line 47, we're not returning anything, then by default, it is returning true. That is, this before each navigation guard allows this navigation. Okay, but I always prefer to explicitly return true, which allows the navigation, or return false, which cancels the navigation. As you can see here, besides true and false, you can also return the path or the name of a route, which I will show you later. But for now, let's comment out the second one. And here we're returning true. As you can see, navigation guards are pretty simple. So let's work on the first new feature for our blog post application. We need users to log in before viewing a specific blog post. But let's create a login page first. So under views, let's create a page login.view. Base. Okay. So here we have H2. Let's call this login. And let's use a form to collect username and password. So here we have a div. In the div, let's create a label and input. But here, let's change this to username, here change it to text. And let's also put a placeholder. Enter your username. Similarly, div, this is for password. Okay. And under password, let's create a button. The type is submit. Okay. Once the user clicks submit, and we're going to call function handle login. And here we're going to prevent the default behavior of form submission. All right. Then let's go to script. In the script, we need to receive the two values, username and password, in the form. How do we do that? Very simple. We can use vModel. But first, let's define two values here in the script. Const username and const password. So both of them are ref values. So that means we need to import ref from view. Here, we need to define a function called handle login. Let's make it empty for now. Then let's scroll up. For the first input box, here let's add v-model username. Here v-model password. So this establishes this bidirectional data flow between the template and the script. So initially, both are empty. So to show you what it looks like, let's go to app. And here, only for testing, let's add this login. Okay, as you can see here, this is only for testing to show what it looks like. Login, username, password, and this is the login button. All right, next, let's add some CSS to beautify this login page. You can find the CSS code in the description of this video. Let me add some CSS classes in the template. Class, login container, class, login form, class, form group, class, login button. So after adding those classes, let me copy and paste the styles. Okay, as you can see, the login page looks pretty good. All right, so let's close this. And here, let's remove this login. Next, let's define the route for the login page. After the about route, but before the not found route, let's define path for login. Name is login, and here component is login. So make sure you import login. Okay. Next, let's change this navigation guard. Okay, so let's get rid of these two lines. Let's have some logic here. If you're going to blog post, recall that blog post is the name of a route, then we're going to redirect you to login. So we can return true, or return false, or we can return the path of a route, in this case, /login, which refers to the login route. Let's test. And press F12. So I go to home, no problem. Go to about, no problem. Go to home, no problem. Go to blog posts, no problem. Okay. Now let's click a specific blog post. Oh, as you can see now, we are redirected to login. For now, we just hardcode this. If a user navigates to a specific blog post, just redirect to the login page. We don't even check the login status. Don't worry, we'll mark that later. There is a small issue here. This web page looks a little bit odd to me because the login page is rendered here, under the navigation bar. This is because we defined this layout, that is, navigation here, and under here is a router view outlet. We define both directly in the app.view. Let's refresh our memory. Like this. That's why the login page is rendered here, under the navigation component. I personally don't like this, since this distracts our users. I want our users to solely focus on login. In other words, let the login component take up the entire page. To resolve this issue, let me introduce a layout system where routes requiring the navigation bar, like the home, blog posts, or about pages, use a main layout component containing the navigation and main content area. For special routes, like the login page and the 404 not found page, the route directly renders the component without using the main layout component, ensuring a clean, distraction-free layout. So, let's define a main layout component. So let's go to Views, right-click, New, and let's call this main layout.view. Some people also create a dedicated folder here named Layouts to store all the layouts. Well, in our case, we only have one layout. That's why we mix it together in the views. It's right here. So this layout is very simple. Let's go to app.view. Let's copy this and paste them in here in the main layout. And let's give this class a different name, main-layout. And here, let's copy this. And of course, here we need to import navigation from add components navigation. Basically, it's a replication of the app.view. All right, since we have the main layout, then we no longer need the navigation here in the app.view. So let's get rid of those. All right. And we can even get rid of this div. Okay, great. So the app.view is simplified to just one router view outlet. There's no script and no style. Okay, as you can see, login, this component is taking this entire page. Then what about other pages? So for example, let's go to home. Okay, welcome to view router. Where is my navigation? Let's go to blog posts. As you can see, we kind of lost our navigation. So that means we need to tweak the route configurations. Okay, so first let me collapse those. And let's copy the first 3 routes. This is home, this one is blog posts, and this is about. So let's cut them. And here let's define a route for the main layout. And here the path is slash. And the name is not home, but main layout. The component is main layout. Make sure you import it. And then the children. Okay. Recall that we just cut the 3 routes: home, blog posts, and about. So let's paste them here as the children of the main layout. Okay. So now we have them. Apparently there is a bug here, but the layout looks fine. Okay, so if I click here, that leads me to the login, which is a different layout. So let's come back. So here is the bug. Both home and about are highlighted. And here is the problem. So let's give a different path to the home route. And here I want to show you another option. Here is redirect. So when we're accessing, for example, localhost 5173, if I press enter, so this redirects to /home. Okay, now if I change it to, for example, blog posts, and if I visit this URL, it automatically redirects me to the blog posts. So let's change it back. Okay, so now our index.js becomes pretty long. So recall that the first one is the route for main layout. The second one is login. The third one is not found, or 404. These 3 components will be rendered in the top level router view defined in the app component. So here, this entire thing is the main layout. If I go to login, this is the entire login page. And if I go to something else, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, this is the not found page. It also takes up the entire page. Okay. Then let's expand the first route. Within the main layout component, we'll render home, blog posts, and about component. So they will be rendered within this main layout here, in the router view within the main layout. And of course, on top, there is this navigation. So this main layout component provides a shared structure for these 3 pages: home, blog posts, and about, ensuring consistency in layout across these routes. That's why we need to treat home, blog posts, and about as the children of this main layout. I hope you can understand this nesting relationship and where each component will be rendered. Okay, So let's go to the navigation card. All right, so let's go to blog posts and click a random blog post and type my username and password, press login. As you can see, nothing happened, which makes sense because if you look at the login page, we haven't defined handle login. So let's try to mark this process. Recall that we don't have a backend ready, so we will need to simulate the login process. So under SRC, let's find APIs. Right click, new. Let's call this auth.js. And here, let's try to store the login status using this very simple JS file. So const is authenticated. And by default, it is false. We need to import ref from Vue. So here is a global state that tracks whether the user is logged in. Okay. Next, let's define two functions: const login, async, username, password, and here we just want to simulate a success for login. Is authenticated.value is true. We're not making any API calls to our backend. Now next is logout. Similarly, we're simulating a successful logout. We set is authenticated to false. And finally, don't forget to export all three of them, a ref variable and two functions. As I said before, in this simple demo, storing login status using a simple JS file is enough. Later, we will learn a more professional way of managing states in Vue applications. We'll use a tool called Pinia. Well, our hand-rolled state management solution like this simple JS file will suffice in this simple demo. There are many more things to consider in large-scale production applications. So only use this for demo purposes. Then let's go back to the navigation guard right here. So right now, the logic is like this. If we're navigating to blog post, the guard will return us to the login page. Well, this doesn't make sense, right? What if we're already logged in or we're already authenticated? So here, let's add in another condition. And is authenticated.value. Don't forget to use .value because this is a ref. And here we should use exclamation mark, not. So if we're not authenticated and we're trying to access a specific blog post, then send us to the login page. Okay, so let's try it. Recall that by default is authenticated is false, right? So click here, it goes to login page. All right, next, let's go here and change this one to true. Okay, refresh. Let's go to blog posts and let's click the magic of Hogwarts. All right, good. There's no need to log in because we hard-coded is authenticated to true. All right, let's change it back. All right, next, let's go to login and implement handle login. So once we typed in our username and a password and click this login button, this method gets called. So what happened behind the scene is this handle login should invoke the login that we defined in auth.js. This one. So login, and then we're going to pass username and password. Okay, make sure we're using dot value. And import this login. Okay, import login from @APIs auth. And here, since login is asynchronous, so here we need to use await. And once we use await here, we need to make this async. Okay, now you're happy. Next, after logging in, we can redirect the user to the home page. Okay, and here we can use programmatic navigation. Router.push to home. Okay, but before that, we need to import use router from view router. And here, get a router instance. Now everything should be fine. All right, so let's quickly test this. Let's go to blog posts. Let's go to the first blog post and just type in John and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're not really checking the username and password. So once I click login, okay, that's good. We are redirected to the home page. Good. However, after logging in, it would be a much better user experience to redirect the logged in user to the page the user originally wanted to visit. In this case, the first blog post. So how can we get the previous route? Let me show you. But first, let's go back to the before each navigation guard. It's right here. Okay, so here, instead of just returning this string, let's return a JS object. So name is login. Recall that there is a login route defined up here. Okay, next, we're going to attach a query parameter, redirect to .fullPath. So for example, if I click blog post and click the magic of Hogwarts, as you can see, here is the URL, blog posts/1. That's the to.fullPath. So this to.fullPath is treated as a query parameter when we are directed to the login page. So the login page will have access to the originally requested route. Okay, so let's go back to login.view. And then let me show you the example. So now I'm going to click the first one. Now, after I click, please pay attention to the URL right here. Okay, as you can see, we are navigated to login. However, because we attached a query parameter here in the navigation guard, there is a query parameter called redirect, and the value is the originally requested route, which is blog posts/1. That is the to.fullPath. So on this login page, we do have access to this redirect query parameter. How do we retrieve this query parameter? And here is the syntax. Okay, so we imported use router. We also need to import use route. So they look very similar. Don't get confused. Okay, so here we're going to get a route, use route. And here we want to redirect to the page the user originally wanted to visit or for back to home. Okay. So const redirect path route.query, and this is how we get the query parameter, and we're only interested in dot redirect, which is this one. If it exists, that's fine. We just assign it to the redirect path. Otherwise, we're going to redirect it to home. So this is the syntax. All right. Next, router dot. You can use push, but after logging in, I do not want my user to navigate back to this login page. So here, instead of using push, I'm going to use replace. And as always, it's a good idea to wrap them in try catch. Okay, let's test. Let's go to blog posts, click the first one, and log in. Good. So now, after logging in, we are redirected to the route I originally wanted to visit. So let's close this. Let's look at the navigation guard again. Right now, there is only one protected route. That is this blog post. In the future, there might be more routes that require authentication. So it would be a bad idea to hard code all the paths here. For example, to.name equals to blog post, maybe equals to user profile, maybe equals to VIP content, and so on and so forth. It would be too tedious to hard code all possible routes that need authentication. Is there an easy way to do this? Sure. View Router provides a way to attach additional information to routes, like requires authentication or not, or roles to control who can access the route. This can be achieved through the meta property, which accepts an object of properties and it can be accessed on the route location and the navigation guards. So here is how you can define this meta property. So let's go to home right here. And let's add in a meta property. And here we can define whether this route requires auth or not. Requires auth, and it is false. So a visitor can visit home. What about blog posts greeting? Requires auth is false. But for here, requires auth is true. For about, requires auth is false. For login, of course, requires auth is false. You do not need to log in to access login. And for this one, same thing. And you may have a question about the meta of a parent route and the meta in a child route. And here are some rules. All child routes will inherit the meta.requiresAuth property unless they define their own meta.requiresAuth field. So in other words, their own requiresAuth will override the one defined in their parent route. Then how do we access this meta field? So let's go to the navigation guard. And instead of hard coding this route, we just want to make sure that if the requiresAuth of this route is true and the user is not authenticated, redirect to login. So how do we do that in here? This is very simple. to.meta.requires auth. That's it. So let's test. So let's go to blog posts, go to the first blog post. Okay. As you can see, we are redirected to login. And let me log in. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so here let me also add some comments. Redirect to the login page with the originally requested route as a query parameter. Next, let me introduce another important navigation guard. Recall that in a previous video, we used a watcher to react to the blog post ID change. So this is blog post 1, 2, 3, and 4. Although we're reusing the same blog post component, but we're loading a different blog post. And this is done by a view watcher. So here is the syntax. And let me show you an alternative using a navigation guard called onBeforeRouteUpdate. So let's comment out this. And let's have the unmounted back. So this one makes sure that when we first load the blog post, we will get the content of a specific blog. Next, let me show you how to use this navigation guard. onBeforeRouteUpdate. Okay. And we do not need this next. So we have to import unmounted here. So here we also need to import onBeforeRouteUpdate. Okay, so now it works. So let's test. Blog post 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so it works. Let me explain. We just directly defined a navigation guard inside a component. This onBeforeRouteUpdate is something called in-component guard. So this onBeforeRouteUpdate navigation guard is invoked when the route that renders this component has changed. But this component is reused in the new route. Okay, let's change it back to using watcher, since this is much easier to use. All right, next, let's implement the second feature. Let's say we would like to remind our users to like us on Facebook. When a user is about to navigate away from the About page, the system will prompt the user to like us on Facebook. Okay, so let's go to About. And we can define a navigation guard in this component. And this is called onBeforeRouteLeave. And here, let's call window.alert. Don't forget to like us on Facebook. Okay. And of course, here we need to import onBeforeRouteLeave from view router. Okay. So if I'm clicking blog posts, before we're navigating away from the About page, this hook gets called. So here, let me put a comment. This hook will be called when we leave the About page. Okay, so if I click OK, then the navigation carries on. This onBefore route leave is also an in-component guard. onBefore route leave is useful for preventing accidental navigation away from a route when there are unsaved changes, such as in forms or multi-step processes. Finally, the third feature, logging successful navigations. So let's go back to the router configuration and define another global hook. It's called router.aftereach. And this is a global after each navigation guard. And this is really good for cleanup or logging. So they are useful for analytics, changing the title of the page, accessibility features like announcing the page, and many other things. And here we can do something like this. Successfully navigate to this path. So in this example, I simply just print them to the console. But in production, we can write those in a log and monitoring all navigations. And they can be very useful for analytics. So next, let me push the branch to GitHub. Navigation guards, git push. Right. In this video, we talked about view router navigation guards. View router navigation guards are functions that let you control route navigation at different stages and are great for adding custom logic and logging. They can be global, for example, before each, after each, per route, which we didn't cover because they are not very commonly used, or in component, like onBefore route update and onBefore route leave. These guards are useful for tasks like authentication checks, confirming unsaved changes, logging user navigations, and so on. Each guard can allow, block, or redirect navigation based on your needs. In the next video, we'll talk about transitions in view router. See you there.